Want help to grow your business? Download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.
Hi, this is Yamini Naidu, and welcome again to the power of storytelling. In this episode, we're going to learn how to craft compelling business stories in 3 steps. So we're all going to be able to craft compelling business stories in 3 steps. So our very first step is to start with purpose. By purpose, I mean, what is the message you want your story to convey? So when you think about Aesop's fables, they always end with, and the moral of the story is, and that's actually the message. Now, we never actually use those words, but that just gives you a sense of what I mean when I talk about purpose. So your very first challenge, or the very first thing you should do, is to write up your message. What is the message behind your story? What purpose does is it gives us clarity. It gives us a target to aim for. A couple of mistakes that people make with purpose, they often start off with a mega purpose, like trying to solve world hunger. To get really focused with our purpose, the simplest way to do that is to think, what is one thing that I want my audience to think, feel, or do differently? What is one thing, only one, so don't be overambitious as a storyteller. What is one thing I want my audience to think, feel, or do differently? For example, so some of my clients, they've written things like, I want them to ask for help if they need it. I want them to step up and take responsibility. Or I want them to provide outstanding customer service. So what is one thing that you want your audience to do differently? The other way to get to purpose is also to think of your purpose as a bumper sticker. The bumper sticker step makes us prioritize. Now, bumper sticker doesn't have to be original. So maybe your bumper sticker is just do it. And we're not going to take your bumper sticker out and print off masses of copies and try and flog it in the marketplace. The bumper sticker is purely for you. It's giving you a tool so you can nail purpose. You'll also find things like optimizing synergies. Doesn't exist on a bumper sticker. So bumper sticker also forces us to do away with all the jargon, all the clutter. Purpose can be the hardest thing to nail. But when you do it, your stories will pop. So I invite you to spend a couple of minutes crafting, recrafting your message for your story. Keep it simple, don't be overambitious, do the bumper sticker step, and think about just one thing that you want your audience to think, feel, or do differently. In my entire journey with storytelling, in the 2 books I've written in 10 years in business, I find that you can't change the world with one story, but you can change the world with lots of little stories. And that's what trying to get your purpose down will help you do. So that's the first big meta step. It's getting your purpose right. So once you've got your purpose, you've nailed your bumper sticker, you've got complete clarity, our next step is to then think about our audience. Every story has to be designed with an audience in mind. This is what makes storytelling compelling. I was recently, long ago, I was at a networking event. And when you're at a networking event, you meet lots of different business owners, lots of people who work in organizations. And one of them had just set up a new business. And I asked him, I said, who is your target audience? Who is the customer? Who's your ideal customer? And he looked at me and he went, anyone with a pulse, really. I know, that's one way not to do a story. Every story you design has to be crafted for a specific audience. Could be your internal team. Could be a group of new stakeholders. Could be your suppliers. Tailoring your story for an audience will make it land. It'll make it resonate with that audience. But then the second deeper step is to think, what motivates your audience? what matters to them. So this is when we get a little bit richer with our audience analysis. So are they motivated by providing the best solution for your customers? Are they motivated by pride in a job well done? This deep understanding of your audience, of what motivates them, will really help you craft that compelling story. To be successful at storytelling requires you to walk in your audience's shoes, to live in their skin, to look at the world from their perspective. And those two questions, who is my audience? So pick a very narrow, defined audience segment, and then ask yourself what motivates them. And if you don't know, ask someone who knows that audience really well. Both of these things can help you set this audience step up for success. So far we've got, I want you to think of two spinning plates. You've got purpose and you've got audience. So now I'm going to introduce the third step. So this is when you get your head around story structure. So with that purpose and audience in mind, you find a story that would work for that purpose and audience. And just in video 3, I gave you a whole lot of tools of where you could go and find stories. The public domain, the professional domain, the personal domain. So now with that purpose and audience in mind, you find a story that you think would work for that audience. And in step 3, what we do is we craft that story. So we give the story. When I talk about story crafting, when I talk about story structure, I'm talking about how you begin your story, what you put in the middle, and then how you land your story so it has impact. So just to go over what we've just done, we've nailed our purpose. So you wrote a bumper sticker. We've had a really good think about who our audience is. We've got a story in mind that would work for that purpose and that audience. And what we're going to do in this mega step 3 is we're going to take that story that you have and we're going to give it structure. So I'm going to spend some time now on how you begin a story. Beginnings and endings are power moments in storytelling. Beginnings are so important because this is when your audience is going to lean in and decide they're going to listen or not. So beginning can hook them in or turn them off where they go, my God, no. And you really want to hook your audience in. Now some beginnings to totally avoid are telling your audience, I'm going to share a story, or I'm going to tell you a story. That's just so patronizing. It's so unnecessary. You never say, I'm going to tell you a statement of fact. So a story doesn't need that sort of beginning. Even worse than I'm going to tell you a story is saying something like, I'm going to tell you a true story. Because then your audience immediately thinks, that's not true. Or what have you been doing all this time? So what works for beginnings? I like to keep a beginning really simple. And I find what works in most instances is using time and place. So for example, you could go, 3 years ago in my last job, or yesterday at the gym, or I remember when I was 10. Can you see how those examples of beginnings have given you? They all use time and place. But because time and place, there are so many variations and combinations of it. It's never formulaic. It never feels, the same old beginning. What time and place does for you, in storytelling, small things make a big difference. So what time and place do is they signal to your audience that this is a story without you having to use all those false beginnings I talked about. I'm going to tell you a story, or before I start, here's a story. So time and place can be really efficient and really powerful in getting your audience engaged. Now, when you craft your beginnings, I talk about crafting, I'm talking about actually writing down your beginning. You write it down, and I want you to speak it out to see if it works. And just use time and place. And that's a really simple but powerful and effective way to begin. So once you've done your beginning, once you've written it down, I want you to do another step with your beginning. I want you to do a Coco Chanel. What do I mean? Coco Chanel, the famous fashion icon, she famously said, less is more. Less is more. So once you've written up your beginning, I want you to go back to it, and I want you to take something out. Very rarely do we nail our beginning in one go. And I talk with all my clients, I talk about having suitable beginning angst. So you've got to really work your beginning to make sure it works. And you need a couple of passes at it to make sure that it's effective, it's punchy, it hooks your audience in. So you use time and place, and then I want you to go back to what you've written and do a Coco Chanel. Think of, how can I improve that? So, if you're saying 3 years ago when I was 21, that's too many numbers in that. So you would just go either 3 years ago or you'd go when I was 21, one or the other. So be sharp with your beginning. Spend enough time and energy on it to really get your audience going. So once you've done your beginning, and I'm really looking at only one sentence or maybe 2 short sentences, anything more than that is too much. So one of the mistakes we make in storytelling is we spend too much time building up context. You're going yada, 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 and you lose your audience. So time and place gets you straight into the story. Our next thing with structure, so this is still that big meta step of story structure. The first part of that is nailing the beginning. The second part of that is going into the middle of your story. So the middle of your story is where the plot unfurls, all the action happens. So, whether it's Hollywood drama or something on TV or in a book, this is where, there's an event, there's an enticing or an igniting event that gets the action going. So I want you to do a couple of things with your middle. I think in business, what makes a story work?
To continue enjoying this presentation, download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.